Hey everybody, it's Laurie White with the Greater Providence Chamber of Commerce with episode number 131 of Chamber TV. We are live on Facebook, we are live on Twitter, and we are live on YouTube. And our special guest today is a returning guest, Tom Parrish, Executive Director of Trinity Rep, a very important institution in our state from an arts and cultural perspective. Tom, welcome. Nice to see you.
Thanks, Laurie. It's nice to be back on your show.
It's great to be able to catch up with you at a very important time, Tom, when you're beginning the effort to bring people back into the theater and get ready for a big fall season. So that's what we thought. It would be great to catch up with you and see what's going on at Trinity. So tell us all about it.
Well, yes, it's there's definitely light at the end of the tunnel. And about a week or so ago, we announced our plans to resume in-person production in the fall of 21. We still have a number of details to work out between now and then. But with that, we have to start ramping up our production operation because we can't just flick a switch and start producing theater again. Each show takes 3 to 6 months to make. And so now that we have optimism that the fall looks like a realistic time to begin resuming in-person indoor gatherings and full production at 100% capacity. We have posted about 30 jobs already that we're going to start hiring to ramp up all of our production operations. But the plan right now is to begin producing again and have our first audience in November of 2021 with A Christmas Carol. And we thought that was a great way to sort of usher the theater back in.
So what season number is it of Christmas Carol? It has to be in the 40s, I would imagine.
Yes. Let's see if I can quote this correctly. I think it's 46, maybe 44. It's been a very important tradition at Trinity Rep for a long time. And generations of people.
Absolutely, including myself, been to see it many times, not only as a kid, but also as an adult. So what is going to be the latest and greatest in terms of the production of A Christmas Carol? You always throw in some surprises there.
Yeah, so this year's production of A Christmas Carol is going to be directed by Joe Wilson Jr., and he was originally scheduled to direct the 2020 production, and then due to COVID, we had to pivot to a digital production of A Christmas Carol, which our artistic director ended up directing with Joe starring as Scrooge, and that was a virtual production that we distributed all around the world in 36 countries on 6 continents. And that was a fantastic experience, but not quite what it's like being in person. So we're very glad that Joe's going to get to realize his vision for A Christmas Carol this year. Like every year, we rebuild A Christmas Carol from scratch with a new creative team and actors and set and design. And Joe's focus is really a lot about community this year. And I think audiences will really enjoy this production.
Is it going to be 100% in person? Is it going to be hybrid? I remember last year you did the ultimate gift where you invited guests to watch it on a complimentary basis.
So we will be offering it both in person and streaming. We were able to have a concession with our unions that will allow us to stream up to the capacity of the theater. So any seats that we don't sell to in-person audiences can be streamed by people anywhere around the world. But it's going to be staged as a theatrical production, and then we'll do a multi-camera filming and edit of the piece to stream the play to those that maybe don't feel comfortable coming to the theater in person yet.
Mm-hmm. So that it would be then asynchronous?
Correct. And there are pros and cons, obviously, to watching things virtually. I expect that this year's production is going to be very popular. So many people's holiday traditions were disrupted last year that I think anyone who's ever been to A Christmas Carol with their family is going to want to come this year and just sort of some return to normalcy. I think will be welcomed.
Mm-hmm. So let me see if I understand this. So the production will be obviously performed live, and then a multi-camera shoot after one of the live productions, which you will then turn into a virtual version of A Christmas Carol, which then can be purchased or live streamed anywhere in the world.
Correct.
Yeah, fantastic. Correct. So are there limitations on how many people can download it?
Yes, our agreement with our collective bargaining partners is that we are constrained by the total in-person capacity of the theater. So we have a 550 seat theater. We're going to do 70 performances. And so that's the number of in-person and virtual tickets that we can sell.
Okay, so you multiply the two numbers and that's how many virtual. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
So I imagine the demand will far exceed that supply of virtual spots, right?
Yes, I think people definitely want to get their tickets early. They want to subscribe to the theater so that they can get that first opportunity to buy tickets to A Christmas Carol.
Fantastic. So let's pull the lens back a little bit and just speak more broadly about the impact that COVID had on Trinity and where you are now in terms of the recovery.
So we were closed on March 12th of 2020 due to all of the health and safety concerns with COVID. And we immediately pivoted into doing digital remote work. And so we also have a partnership with Brown University where we house the Brown Trinity MFA programs in acting and directing. And so that moved into a virtual space. And then last summer, we actually did have some in-person summer camps outdoors for kids. And then in the fall, with our partnership with Brown, those MFA students did resume in-person classes on Trinity Rep's campus. And so I guess one of the positives of not producing is each of our three theaters was open. And so each class was able to occupy a full theater. So the students were able to socially distance and continue doing their work in some form in person. And so we have been operating throughout the pandemic. And then our educational classes have been remote and virtual, although we've been doing some in-person arts clinical therapy at places like Bradley Hospital, for example. And then we had our virtual production of A Christmas Carol. And then this spring, we've been producing a couple of virtual series. We have the Writer's Room, which allows folks to watch and be a part of our new play development process. That's our sort of research and development, where we commission scripts and we commission writers to write scripts for us that we may produce in the future. And people have been able to participate in that. And then also our America 2 Reckoning and Resilience, which is a community discussion and humanities-based discussion series around issues of reckoning and resilience that have come about throughout the pandemic. So those programs have been happening, and then we'll resume in-person summer camps for K through 12 this summer. And we have a number of sessions of that, and people who are interested can go to our website, trinityrep.com, to check out those opportunities. But most of those classes are already full. And then, as I mentioned, I think the biggest impact was we sadly had to let so many folks go, and the impact from an employment perspective and a talent retention perspective has been significant. But thankfully, due to the federal programs and the federal relief programs, as well as the private philanthropy in Rhode Island, financially, we've been able to keep things on track and relatively together. But one of the biggest impacts was in our employment. And so it's really great to be able to have jobs openings again and for people to have opportunities to come work for us.
Mm-hmm. We were chatting before we went live about the conundrum of many employers having some difficulty getting people to return to work, but that is not the case with Trinity, right?
Yeah, we're seeing really robust applications from applicants all around the country, looking to come to Providence and Rhode Island and work with us. We have a range of jobs, from production to administration, marketing, fundraising, the trades, service-oriented jobs. Basically, every department within Trinity Rep is hiring, and so it's really a unique opportunity for people that have been looking for, to break into the industry, or just get back to work. Unemployment in our industry has been exceptionally high through the pandemic.
Mm-hmm. And what we were talking about is the idea that those that want to work in the arts are pursuing a vocation, right?
Yes, these are careers, and people train for them. They go to school for them. Whether it's the trades or people getting advanced degrees in design, theatrical production, marketing, etc. People are pursuing these as career paths, and I think what's interesting, if people go to our website, even just to look at what kind of jobs there are in the theater. Most people, when they think of theater, they think of just the people on the stage, but the people on the stage are only maybe 10 or 15% of the people that actually create, that it takes to create the work that people see. Right.
So did you have to lay off your entire staff, or were there some back office folks that were predictably handling PPP and other such matters?
We typically pre-pandemic employed on average about 115 to 120 full-time equivalents. And when we decided we weren't going to be able to produce this season, we downsized to about 28 full-time equivalents. And that's come up a little bit, but as I mentioned, the Brown Trinity MFA program has been fully operational throughout the pandemic, as have our educational classes. And we engaged in the work share program with the state of Rhode Island, and that helped us maintain some employment numbers. But yes, there was a significant impact, and we basically went down to our skeleton crew because we didn't know how long this was going to last. I mean, the pandemic could have lasted, and maybe still in some form will last for a number of years. So we needed to make sure that we were in a sustainable position to weather as long as the pandemic was going to take.
Are you in competition with theaters all across the country or all over the world to draw the best talent now that everybody is reopening?
Yes, there are lots of jobs at theaters all over the country that are popping up now as people restaff their organizations. So there certainly is competition, and we've been very mindful of that as we've been planning for our reopening. We've really been using this time of not producing to really look at our operation, particularly through an equity, diversity, inclusion, and anti-racism lens, and how we could build back a more equitable institution. And so we've restructured a lot of the roles, we've restructured the pay scales and the pay tiers, and really tried to use this rare opportunity of not producing to build a stronger and more equitable theater company on the other side.
And what, give us some examples of some of the gains that you've made in your ability to really attract a very competitive workforce.
Well, we've restructured a number of organizations, and there's actually going to be an announcement today or the next few days about some new senior leadership positions that we've hired and that we've reorganized. But really trying to create clear paths of advancement within the organization. We've benchmarked all of our compensation to national medians and taking into regional considerations to make sure that we're providing competitive compensation for folks, and also equitable compensation across the organization. And so it was, as I said, a very rare opportunity to make sort of holistic changes to the way that we're structured from a human resources perspective.
That's really interesting because, the story tradition of Trinity and its reputation nationally and internationally as a place for excellent theater. But today we just can't rely on those kinds of themes to draw in the best talent. We have to, all of our organizations have to, really recognize the underpinnings and what else we can do to make each of our organizations one that, as you point out, is sustainable, predictable career paths, and one that allows everybody to have an upward career trajectory and to be fairly paid and compensated, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of that work is part of why we're recruiting such great applicants right now, and have been as we started to hire positions this past spring. The quality of the applicant pools has been really excellent, and so I think that will only serve to further the excellence of the work that we're able to provide at Trinity Rep for this community.
Tell us a little bit about what you know about what's going on across the country. I know you're very, very connected with your colleagues all across the world in this space, and you share best practices with one another and talk and compare notes.
Mm-hmm.
So you must have some observations on what's happening elsewhere, like what's happening with Broadway, as an example.
Yeah. Well, what's been interesting and challenging throughout the pandemic is every state's regulations and guidance have been different, and so each theater's in a different place. And now it seems to be sort of universally opening up across the country. But I have colleagues that have been producing shows through almost through the entire pandemic, and there's been a lot of learnings coming from that about how to create a truly safe experience and what is audience demand, and how social distancing does or does not work within the theater. And meanwhile, we're a heavily unionized industry as well, so we have to work with all of our collective bargaining partners to make sure that we're providing a safe workplace for people, and what are the conditions under which people can work that are safe. And so we're still working through those details, and thankfully, Trinity's not producing again until the fall, so we still have time to work through some of those details, or all of those details. But there are some of my colleagues that are going to be opening sooner within the next few weeks, and we'll learn a lot as an industry as we go through that process. But in terms of Broadway, Broadway is expecting to be open in September, and a number of shows have already announced that they'll be reopening at that time. And I think the key thing for people to understand about the economics of theater is that the economics and the margins are so slim to negative that we need the 100% capacity in our venues to even have a chance at recouping the costs of production. And in the nonprofit space where Trinity Rep exists, we lose money on every production that we make, with the exception of Christmas Carol. And so we need subsidy in order to operate. So when there are capacity constraints and things caused by social distancing, the economics just don't work for us. So it's great that we're able to start coming back to full capacity over the next couple of weeks and into the fall.
Mm-hmm. So it's an interesting point that you're making. And do you envision in the future that the virtual streaming model, that you'd be able to incorporate some additional work rules to allow you to perhaps help subsidize what you just mentioned around the production costs and losing money on most shows?
Well, what's been interesting about the virtual space is we've actually, since the reopening has started, we've seen a decline in demand for our digital offerings. I think people just want to be back in person. And even during the pandemic, very few of my colleagues have found ways to monetize digital streaming in a way that makes economic sense, given the cost and investment that it takes to produce the work. We had a very successful run of Christmas Carol, which we offered for free, but it was successful just because of the level of philanthropy that was behind it, as well as the government support. But very few of my colleagues have found a way to really monetize the digital streaming. So I think I know at Trinity and some other places, we're viewing the digital sort of as a yes and, not a replacement, but as a supplement to provide, whether it's bonus content or surround content or broader access to people that don't have the ability to come to the theater in person.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. The economics of theater is definitely an opaque issue, but if anyone can figure out how to make that work, it would be you, given your your background as a financial expert and also an artistic expert. So those two themes and disciplines are enveloped in you perfectly. So we are so fortunate to have you in Rhode Island with those capabilities and talents. So in addition to Christmas Carol, what else can we look forward to this season or this fall?
Well, our subscription season is going to start up in January, and just due to the timing of how things are playing out, we're going to have a 4-play subscription series that people can subscribe to, and it's very affordable, and I encourage people to check it out. People can get 4 plays for as little as $80, and we have payment plans available too. But we start in January with a play called Tiny Beautiful Things by Cheryl Strayed, and it's based on her novel, Tiny Beautiful Things: Advice on Love and Life from Dear Sugar. So Cheryl Strayed is a advice columnist, and she wrote under the pseudonym Dear Sugar. And Nia Vardalos adapted those stories into this lovely play that's just a celebration of the simple beauty of being human. It's funny, deeply touching, and uplifting, and a real exploration of resilience, which we felt was just a great story to sort of launch us out of the pandemic. And our artistic director, Kurt Columbus, is going to be directing that. And then we follow that with a play, August Wilson's Gem of the Ocean. And August Wilson wrote an American century cycle of 10 plays set in each of the 10 decades of the 20th century, chronicling African-American experiences. And Gem of the Ocean is chronologically the first in that series, set in the 1900s, set in 1904, actually. And the characters in that play are ancestors of those that were featured in Radio Golf, which was actually the play that was the last full run we did before the pandemic. So it's really a wonderful opportunity for folks to sort of see the beginning of that arc of a story. And Jude Sandy, who's one of our company members, will be directing that play. And then we follow that with Jose Rivera's adaptation of a Spanish Golden Age classic called Sueño. And it's a humorous and haunting modern adaptation that examines the nature of fate and reality, and that will be directed by Tatiana Marie Carlo. It's a larger than life story, and she's going to be framing it within the frame of a telenovela. It should be just sort of over the top and fun and funny. And then we close the season with the Pulitzer Prize winning Fairview by Jackie Sibley's Drury. And that will close us out in our Chase Theater. As I mentioned, it's a Pulitzer Prize winner. It starts simply, it's Grandma's birthday, and Beverly, the mother, needs the family's celebration to be perfect, but her husband's no help. Her sister's getting into the wine. Her brother hasn't arrived, and the teenage daughter's secrets threaten to derail the day. And then this family comedy takes a surprising turn, becoming unpredictable and thrillingly theatrical, and boldly confronts perceptions of race and identity. And Jude Sandy will also be directing that play. So that's the season, and that'll get us through June of 22.
Where do you find the talented, capable directors? Is this within the whole Trinity family, or are you recruiting from elsewhere?
So Trinity Rep, we have one of the last longstanding resident acting companies in the country, and within that acting company, directors have also been cultivated. And so, as I mentioned, Joe Wilson Jr., who's a company member, will be directing Christmas Carol. Jude Sandy, who's a company member, will be directing Fairview and Gem of the Ocean. Kurt Columbus is our artistic director, so he's a resident artist. So we have a lot of resident artists that work on our shows, but we also do bring in the occasional outside director who's out in the national landscape. And then the Brown Trinity MFA programs in acting and directing are ways that we've cultivated talent in the next generation of directors and actors. And Tatiana, who's directing Sueño, she's one of our MFA directing alum as well. So that's where we find a lot of our talent. But as a national theater, we pull from a pool of talent throughout the country.
Mm-hmm. And I imagine a lot of the talent around the country that's mobile and wants to go and visit various theater companies and join for a finite period of time.
Yeah, and Providence is situated, partway between Boston and New York, and so we're in a very rich cultural corridor in the United States, and there's a lot of talent in that area that we can draw from to just enrich the work that our local resident artists are doing in Providence.
So I've asked you this question before, and I always find it fascinating, but what is the key to identifying a production that will be box office success and certainly a financial success too? So I guess the two probably go hand in hand, but maybe not. Let's talk about it from a box office perspective. What do you think brings people in?
Oh gosh, if we knew that, then we would. This job would be a lot easier. I think the thing to know about theater is we're making everything from scratch. So if you think of it, we're doing new product launches 6 times a year, and we have our experience and our research about what may or may not be financial or box office success, and that sort of learning helps to inform the choices. Knowing one's audience, knowing one's region, a lot of it is having a pulse on the community and what the community's zeitgeist or psyche is at the moment and what will resonate within the community. But I want to say, like, as a nonprofit organization, box office success is only one of the metrics of success. We are primarily an artistically driven institution that's driven by core values of company, community, and education. And so our work, we measure success on all of those measures. We measure artistic success, we measure community success. How are we reaching and serving communities with the work that we're putting on stage? How are we catalyzing important community conversations around important civic issues? And then the last pillar of education. How are we advancing education in the community, providing K through 12 opportunities, as well as continuing education opportunities for people all the way up into their senior and elder years. So there's sort of those 3 core value metrics as well as the box office. And so it's about balancing and finding a balance amongst all of those goals.
That is definitely a heavy load. Most of them are pretty self-explanatory in terms of metrics, but I'm wondering, how do you measure whether something is an artistic success?
Yes, those are definitely more qualitative measures. There is sort of critical reviews and that can provide some opinions of whether things are an artistic success or not, but also the experience of the artists and how the artists are growing within the work and within their body of work. That's something that we look at. Sort of the quality and the manifestation of the production and how all of the pieces come together, and the audience response in some way. So we survey after each person comes to see a show. They receive a survey and provide us with feedback on that, and that helps us to gain some qualitative feedback on the artistic quality of the work, so that we can continue to learn and grow and innovate as an artistic producer.
Mm-hmm. What do you ask on the survey?
It's really a pretty simple survey. It's basically, rate your experience from 1 to 5, and then provide us any open-ended comments. So it's a pretty simple survey because we want people to fill it out. Yeah,
easy questions.
Mm-hmm.
Easy questions. So in the remaining minutes that we have left, I just want to pick your brain and get our listeners excited about the upcoming season and ways that they can engage with Trinity in ways that go far beyond just attending a show. So you've outlined a bunch of things that people can learn about, participate in, enroll in. So tell us a little bit about that and where people can go to learn more about the wide-ranging opportunities of engagement with Trinity.
Our website, trinityrep.com, is a great gateway to all of the various opportunities, but we produce a ton of programming at Trinity. People mostly know us for sort of the big shows that are on our stages and the tickets that we sell for those, but there are tens of education and community engagement programs, both related to the shows, but also the continuing education of the audience. Our mission at Trinity Rep is to reinvent the public square. And so we try to create opportunities that bring communities together to really engage around important civic issues, have dialogue, and learn and grow as a community. And so if people want to take acting classes, we do classes for lawyers and doctors and salespeople, and to sort of build those skills and stage presence and presentation. We have acting classes for people that want to just build their acting skills. But then there are our community discussions, and a lot of those activities are free and open to the public and engaging around important conversations, whether it's housing or racism in our community, or police community relations, or gun violence, or immigration. There are all sorts of spaces where people can engage and build community. And all of those can be found on our website. And I should also plug that this summer, as in past summers, we partner and support Rhode Island Latino Arts in the production of Teatro en el Verano, which is a bilingual touring production that goes around the state to parks and recreation centers and provides free performances. And this year, the production is La Mancha, which is an adaptation of Don Quixote, and that people can check out our website when we announce the tour schedule for that.
That's really cool. So I didn't realize that you actually did acting lessons for audiences other than individuals who are pursuing a career or an aptitude in the stage. So that's really interesting. Doctors and lawyers and others who want to refine their presence and their communication skills and be more at ease, I guess.
Yeah, like we have improv classes, which are great for any sort of professional business person who has to do presentations or even just operating in the workplace. A lot of our theater is a great tool for learning 21st century business skills in the soft skills of teamwork, collaboration, public speaking, and so improv is a great exercise. It teaches people how to respond in the moment, take the inputs that they're given from the person they're working with, build upon that, and give something back. And so those creative skills are really important for the evolution of the 21st century economy. And so we do offer classes that provide those skills.
That's fascinating. That truly is. Leave it to you to come up with something as ingenious as that.
Oh, it wasn't my idea. I don't want to take any credit for it. But we have a fantastic education and community department that are doing this work across a broad spectrum of service areas.
Fantastic. So we were putting a scroll across the bottom of the screen so people could see how they might reach your box office and also reach out through your website, trinityrep.com, box office, phone number, etc. What's the best way for people to learn more about subscribing?
I think that people can purchase subscriptions right on our website now. Fortunately, before the pandemic, we made a great investment in our technology and customer relationship management platform. So we were well positioned to pivot to that in the pandemic. But the website has all of the information about subscribing. People can go there. Our box office is still really a lean crew at the moment, so I encourage people to check out the website first, and if they have any trouble there, to call the box office.
Tom Parrish, Executive Director of Trinity Rep. We love having you on Chamber TV. We love talking with you. We're thrilled that you are a member of the Chamber's Board of Directors, and you provide such great feedback and input and perspective to all of us in business. So get your tickets, everybody. The 2021 version of Christmas Carol, no doubt, is going to be a sellout, but I know we want to support the entire package of offerings that the theater is coming forward with in 2021, so that we all get back together, we all can feel really good that the recovery has begun in earnest and that we are supporting our resident theater group, Trinity Repertory Company. So, Tom, thank you again, and we'll catch you next time.
Great. Thanks so much, Laurie.